Assalamu alaikum everybody and welcome to episode 6 of the Arabic with Sam podcast. Firstly, a huge shout out to you guys on Spotify. For some reason, Spotify is by far the biggest audience for my podcast. I love you guys over there. So big shout out to you guys first of all. Today's topic of the podcast is numbers in Arabic. This was requested by a sister who got in touch with me on Facebook. I'm running a Facebook ad at the moment, trying to get people just to chat to me, really. Not because I'm lonely, but just because I want to help people learn Arabic. Got this little Facebook ad out, basically asking people if they need help. And people are getting in touch with me saying, this is my biggest concern with learning Arabic. This is what I'm struggling with at the moment. This is what we need more resources on. And hugely and a very, very high demand topic is numbers. So we're going to run through the numbers all the way from number 1 all the way up to 100. So numbers I think are probably one of the most complicated bits of grammar, I think, or certainly when I was at university studying Arabic, it was the sort of thing that the lecturers would all sort of shudder at the idea of having to teach these morons in first year, us lot, how to use the numbers in Arabic, because, firstly, I think something that makes it difficult, now I'm on the other side of the table and I'm actually a teacher of it now rather than just a student, people often think that numbers should be like the easiest thing. Like, I used to teach children. I've recently stopped teaching children, but I come from a primary school teaching background, and when I left my job as a primary school teacher, I started mainly teaching kids. I was under the impression that I'd be best at teaching kids because I came from that background, and parents are often like, you should start off just with some simple topics for us, please. Can you teach our kids how to use the numbers and how to use the colours? And those two things are two of the hardest bits of grammar that you will ever learn in the entire Arabic language. So I do get it. So let's have a little run through it then. So let's begin. So I'll firstly say to you, by today we're going to go over the 6 main groups of numbers and their respective grammars. There are these 6 groups of numbers. They have their own grammar completely. So firstly, the first group is just the number 1. Just dealing with the number 1 alone, the grammar of it is different to any of the other numbers. The second group is using the number 2. Number 2 is a funny bit of a middle ground in Arabic, because in Arabic, plural is not the number 2. In Arabic, plural is 3 or more. In English, plural is 2 or more. We either have 1 pen or we have pens, and that's 2 or more. If I say I have pens, it could mean that I have 2 or more. But in Arabic, plural is 3 or more, and there's this little middle ground in the middle called the dual, when you're talking about having 2 of something. So the number 2 has its whole own category of lessons and of lessons. So the number 1 is the first category we'll talk about. Talking about the number 2 is the next category. The next category are the numbers from 3 to 10. They have their own grammar. The next category will be from the numbers 11 to 19, and then other numbers in between the multiples of 10. So like 11 to 19, 21 to 29, 31 to 39. All of those sort of numbers in between the multiples of 10. And then another category will be the multiples of 10, how to deal with saying 10 houses, 20 people, 30 soldiers, 40 countries, stuff like that. And then the last category that will go through, the 6th category, is just to use the number 100. And, the number 100, the way that you treat it is the same as the number 1,000, the number 1,000,000, the number billion, and so on and so forth. So let's get into it then, inshallah. Let me just check how long I've been blabbering for. So we'll begin with the number 1. The number 1 is the easiest, I think, by far, and really it's just treated like another adjective. You just treat it as another adjective. So the number 1 is wahidun, not wahad. In Aramiya, in dialects of Arabic, they say wahad or wahade in the feminine, but in Fusha it's wahida, wahidun, or wahidatun in the feminine. And when I say use it as an adjective, in Arabic, the same as you use any adjective after the noun, it's the same as how you treat the number 1. If I'm going to say baytun wahidun, that means one house. Just as I'd say baytun kabirun if I was saying a big house, or if I was saying rajulun sa'idun, a happy man. I'd say rajulun wahidun, one man. And then just some examples for the feminine. I mean, if I was going to say one car, I'd say sayaratun wahidatun. Or I'd say bintun wahidatun. It's literally used exactly the same as you would use an adjective. But most of the time, you don't really even need it. If you're ever talking about one of something, you don't really even need to specify that you're talking about one. You know, if you know, نحن نتكلم على بيت, if we're talking about a house, we don't necessarily need to say that we're talking about one house. We're just talking about a house. Like whenever you talk about a something, you are just talking about one most of the time. So, you know, you don't necessarily need to always use the number one. In fact, it's quite rare to use the number one unless you really need to emphasize that it's not multiple of something, if it is just one. Good. So let's go on to the number two. So there is a way of saying the number two. It's not common. In fact, the only time when I ever really hear it is when children are learning to count. And they go from واحد اثنان. Ithnani is the way that it's written. There is a kasra on the end, ithnani. And, you know, so it does exist, right? But before we get into the number two, let's talk about the use of the number two. So it's most common that you'll use the dual. Okay, if you're ever talking about two of something, you use the dual. So the dual has two endings. It's either ani or aini. And the reason why you use these respectively is the ani is what we call the marfu' ending, or the nominative ending, or the subject ending. So if a word is the subject of the sentence, let's say, I don't know, let's say that the mudarris, the teacher, is the subject of the sentence. If you're going to say two teachers, you'd say mudarrisani. But if it's the object of the sentence, you use an aini ending rather than ani. So you say mudarrisaini. If you say, for example, I saw two teachers, أنا رأيت مدرسين. I saw two teachers. So the number two, we're actually using the number two. I mean, that is by far the most common way. If you're ever talking about two of something, 99% of the time, it will just require you use the dual of that word and not actually use the number two. You know, if you're ever to say two houses, you don't say two, the number two, and then houses. You just say baytani or baytaini. But if you do ever need to use the number two has gender, just like wahid and wahida, it does have gender, but it also has case. You know how I just mentioned, it has ani and aini endings. So kind of the base, the root of the word number two is you have ithen, that's like the base of it, and depending on what gender or case, you have a different ending. So for example, if the number two is the subject, if we're just saying something like we are two, like there are two of us, okay? نحن اثنان. It's just the ani ending because we're the subject. You know, if we're saying we are two or there are two of us, نحن اثنان. But if we are both feminine, if I'm saying like there's two of us but we're both girls, we just put a ta in there, اثنتان. اثنان اثنتان. So those are the same case. They're both the nominative case or the marfu' case, but they're just different genders, ithnani and ithnatani. And then we have, if they're the different case, so if they are the mansub or the majroor case, or the genitive or the accusative case, then it's ithnaini or ithnataini, depending on whether it's masculine or feminine. Masculine is ithnaini, feminine is ithnataini. So if I was to say, for example, if you say, I saw two, you know, like let's say we already know what we're talking about. We're already talking about I don't know, we're already talking about birds. Okay, let's say I'm into bird watching. I'm not, but let's say I'm into bird watching, and when we go, I could say something like أنا رأيت اثنتين. I saw two feminine ones, or أنا رأيت اثنين. أنا رأيت اثنين. I saw two, you know. Yeah, so you can use it like that. If you're just referring to two things, then you might use it. But that is literally the only case when I can imagine using it. So number one has its own specific grammar, that it's just used as an adjective. That's nice and simple. Number two, there are actually four ways of saying the number two. Okay, there's masculine and feminine in the marfu' case, so ithnani and ithnatani, and then there's masculine and feminine in the other cases, so ithnaini and ithnataini. Okay, so there are kind of four different ways. I'll mention this at the end in a little bit more detail, but I'm giving you guys a free download. I'm giving you guys a free little gift just because I love you guys. I spent a couple of hours this morning putting it together for you. You can go to my website. You can go to arabicwithsam.com/free stuff. Or I'll put a link in the show notes below. You can click on it to go to the website, and you can download a whole poster that I've put together for you for all of these rules. All of these rules in one big poster with examples and stuff as well, explaining the grammar of using each of these verbs, each of these words even, sorry, so you don't forget it. And you can print it out, you put it up on your wall or whatever. I might color code it even for you guys just to be nice. And so that's something that I've done for you for free. You can go to my website and you can get a hold of, inshallah. So yeah, let's move on then. So we talked about the number one, we talked about the number two. Those are the first two categories of how we deal with numbers. The third category, and my favourite category, is the numbers from 3 to 10. From 3 to 10, these are the only numbers actually that, when you use them, the noun that you use afterwards is in the plural. Like in English, if I say something like 3 cars, cars is the plural, right? Or if I say 5 houses, houses is the plural. And in English, we do that for the rest of the numbers in the plural, right? Like we say 80 cars, 100 houses, but in Arabic they don't do that. In Arabic they use the singular most of the time. Anything above 10, they use the singular. It's only the numbers from 3 to 10 that actually use the plural. And although that is a bit odd, it does exist in English. Like I was thinking about this the other day, like when I was watching a rugby match the other day, one of the guys who I was with was like, oh, it's an 80-minute match. And I thought, it's an 80-minute. We don't say it's an 80 minutes match. So it's not too dissimilar, actually. Like, we kind of do have that idea in English as well. We can actually say that. We can say 80-minute rather than 80 minutes in some contexts. So it's not too alien to us, but it does seem a bit strange when we first encounter it. So the numbers from 3 to 10. Firstly, if you really want to get good at these numbers from 3 to 10, study Arabic, not in Palestine, but in Jordan. And let me explain that. I know that sounds a bit odd, how studying just over a very small and should be non-existent border can change that, but it's basically to do with the currency. I noticed when I was living in Palestine, the currency that they use there is shekel. They use Israeli shekels, is shekel, and they don't ever use the plural shawakil unless they're literally talking about like a handful of 1 shekel coins. They don't use the term shawakil. They just say 4 shekel, 5 shekel, 6 shekel, 7 shekel. They just use shekel for all of them. But in Jordan, I can't remember if this is dirhams. Yeah, it's dirhams, I think it is, that they use in Jordan, or dinars or dirhams. But either way, whichever one it is it dinars? It doesn't matter. So someone put in the comments if you're listening to this on YouTube which one it is. I could easily Google it, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, but whatever currency they use, they do use the plural of that word. So let's say it's dinars. They would say thalathatu dananir. They use the plural. So I noticed that when we were on our year abroad, I was studying in Palestine, but the students who went to Jordan, they were way better at the numbers than us, because they had a chance to practice it in their spoken Arabic because of the currency that they use in Jordan, which I thought was quite interesting. That can actually the culture and the structures that are in place of a certain country can influence how beneficial your Arabic language learning journey is there. So yeah, sorry, that's a little bit of rambling. Let's get back to the grammar of the numbers 3 to 10. So there's a few things that the counted noun has to be. When I'm talking about the counted noun, I'm talking about the number. Like if I say like 5 houses, houses is the counted noun when I refer to it, the thing that has the number ascribed to it. So the first thing, which is a little bit odd, is that it has to be reverse gender. Numbers have gender, okay? So we have, for the number 3, ثلاث in the masculine, ثلاثة in the feminine, أربع, أربعة for the number 4. For the number 5, خمس, خمسة. You actually need to make numbers masculine and feminine, just like the numbers 1 and 2. I have already seen that. But let's say, for example, we're talking about 5 men, okay? أي رجل, رجل is masculine. So we have to use the feminine of the number. We'd have to say خمسة. We'd have to say 5 in the feminine. So that's the first thing. We have to use it in reverse gender. Of the singular, by the way. Reverse gender of the singular, not of the plural. Sometimes they're different. Sometimes the plural is a different gender than the singular. But it's reverse gender of the singular. We have to use the word in the plural. So we don't say rajul, we say rijal. Okay, so we'd have khamsatu rijal so far. we have to use it in the genitive case. It kind of is very similar to an idafa, and even some grammar books do teach it as being an idafa. I don't, because the idafa is supposed to be for possessive things, and it's not really five of the men, or it's not really like the men aren't really owning the five in any way. So, but grammatically it does look very similar. So we'd have khamsatu rijalin would be 5 men. Khamsatu rijalin. So it has to be reverse gender. The counter noun has to be plural. It has to be indefinite, by the way, and it has to be kasras at the end. Genitive case, majroor. So if we just have a look at a few other examples, if we were to have something like, let's say 7 cups. Okay, so a cup is a korb, it's masculine. Akwab is the plural, so it's going to be akwabin. And then, so korb is masculine, so the number we'll have to use is sab'atu, if we're using the feminine of 7. Sab'atu akwabin. Sab'atu akwabin, 7 cups. So that's how it works. That's how it works. We have plenty of examples in the printable that you can download from the website as well. Go over and check that out. Or you can even just pause the podcast if you want. I mean, obviously that's the joy of it being a podcast. You can pause it, go to my website, download it, come back. Okay, so let's move on. Numbers 11 to 19. So we have, okay, so obviously we learnt that the numbers 3 to 10 take reverse gender. So when we're saying 18 or 17 or 16 or 13, the 3 takes reverse gender with the 10. So we have ثلاثة عشرة. The عشرة is feminine, but the ثلاثة is masculine. And the عشرة on the end will agree with the word they're using afterwards. Okay, that's the way that's most helpful for me to remember it. But there'll always be reverse gender between the 3 and the 10 in 13. There'll always be reverse gender between the 5 and the 10 in 15. Let me read them through for you. I'll read the masculine ones for you first. So أحد عشرة is 11, 12 is إثنى عشرة, and then in the other case is إثني عشرة, and then 13 ثلاثة عشرة, 14 أربعة عشرة, 15 خمسة عشرة, 16 ستة عشرة, 17 سبعة عشرة, 18 ثمانية عشرة, and then 19 تسعة عشرة. And that عشرة on the end, if that's masculine, then that's what you use will agree with the next number. So for example, I mean, let's say we were to have something like, an example that I've put in the worksheet is 11 stars. We see this in Surah Yusuf, and it says أحد عشرة كوكبا. So أحد عشرة كوكبا. So a kawkab is masculine, okay, and the ashara before it is masculine as well. So أحد عشرة كوكبا. And then the noun, I forgot to mention that. The noun is again indefinite, but singular. Okay, it's not the plural this time. Even though in English we would say 11 stars, in Arabic they kind of say 110 star. أحد عشرة كوكبا, and that star needs to have this N on the end. It's accusative case. Let's have another example. Let's say something like, if we would say 15 houses, okay? So we're not going to say buyut, the plural, we're going to say bayten on the end. Bayt is masculine, so we'll say خمسة عشرة bayten. خمسة عشرة bayten. The bayt agrees with the ashara, but it does not agree with the khamsa before it when we're saying the 15, because it takes reverse gender. This is what I think makes it so complicated. It's so complicated that you even have reverse gender going on in the middle of numbers. You have numbers affecting other numbers with their reverse genderness. So that is just something that's tough. That's just how it is, unfortunately. But as I say, like for each of these, because it's difficult, I've put examples for each of these. Every single one of them has their own example in the printable that you can go and get hold of on my website. You don't have to give me your email, by the way. And I know a lot of people who are trying to sell stuff online. They ask for your email address, and then in return for your email address, then they'll send it to you. You can just have it. I'm not trying to bombard you with marketing and stuff. Most of what I do, and the reason why I'm doing stuff for free, is because I'm actually just here to, my main service is to help people who want to learn Arabic. That is my main service. And then I do want to sell a course to people who need it. I don't want to sell my course to people who who don't need it or won't benefit from it. Most days people email me about my course and I tell them not to sign up to it because it's not right for them. But for a lot of people, it is right, and that's what pays for the whole party. I'm very, very grateful to all of the students who sign up to it because that's what pays for everything. That's what indirectly the people who buy my course are the people who put food in my son's mouth, and they clothe me and my wife and my son. So may Allah bless those guys who are enrolled on the program. So we'll carry on, inshallah. So what have we covered? We've covered the number 1, which is used just like an adjective. We've covered the number 2, which has case and gender, but most of the time you use the dual instead. We've covered the numbers 3 to 10, and in those we use reverse gender, plural noun, genitive case, and that whole structure looks very similar to an idafa. There are, as I say, 7 examples of that in the worksheet. Just cover the numbers from 11 to 19, and this is the same rule for, as I say, all of the numbers in between the multiples of 10. This is the same rule. The actual, honestly, like I read some articles just whilst planning for this podcast. I read some articles just to see what other Arabic teachers had written online and stuff like that, and what the best practices were for teaching this. And it's so confusing the way some people put it. Like it's already confusing. Like even if you have it clear, black and white in front of you, it is already a bit mental. Like you've got to accept it. You've got to be a bit loopy. So if you're not a bit mad, then you do need time to just let this sink into your brain. I know that I learned this as one of the last things that I learned in my first year, and I didn't understand it at all when I finished my first year of Arabic. And then when I came back after the summer holiday, I got it. Like just because sometimes your brain just needs time to let these new structures of language just set in a little bit. And sometimes when we over question it too much, it ends up becoming even worse. Sometimes it is just acceptance of that it's different. So okay, we've been over that. Cool. So now we're coming on to the multiples of 10. Okay, really nice. So the multiples of 10 actually behave the same. The multiples of 10, the counted noun afterwards behaves the same, but you don't have all of this issue with gender. There is no gender with the multiples of 10. You just take the number. So, for example, except the example of 20. I mean, 20 isn't anything added to number 2. The number 20 is عشرون if it's عشرون if it's in the مرفوع case, عشرين if it's in the other cases. Okay, so it's like the plural of 10. It's just like saying tens. عشرون or عشرين. Okay, and then 30, ثلاثون or ثلاثين, 40, أربعون or أربعين, 50, خمسون or خمسين, 60, ستون or ستين, 70, سبعون or سبعين, 80, ثمانون or ثمانين, 90, تسعون or تسعين. Okay, and then it's slightly different to the teens. I mean, when you use like 34 or 45 or numbers in between there, you need to put a little word in. So you'd say something, and you put the smaller number first. So you'd say like خمسة وثلاثون. That'd be 35. Or أربعة وستون. That'd be 64. Or سبعة وسبعون. That'd be 77. Then you put a little w in the middle, and the smaller digit comes before the what do you call it, the units come before the tens, or the ones come before the tens. I don't know which one you're supposed to use anymore. I was a terrible maths teacher when I was a primary school teacher. I probably would have been sacked if I hadn't left, to be honest. I was that bad. Alhamdulillah. So, cool, okay. And the rule is essentially the same, right? The way that you treat the noun afterwards. So as we're saying like singular, but accusative, indefinite. So we're saying like كوكبا, رجلا, بيتا, قلعة, مسجدا, مدرسة. You use those the same with the multiples of 10 as you would with the words in between, the numbers in between the multiples of 10. So for example, let's just run through a few examples. I don't have any written in front of me actually. I haven't quite finished the printable yet, but it will be ready by the time you hear this. So I mean, I don't know, if we were to say something like 50 stars, okay, 50 stars. So a star is a nejm. Is a nejm. So we'd say nejmen would be stars. So خمسون نجما would be 50 stars. Or if we were to say 60 steps. Okay, my program's called the Arabic in 60 steps. So let's say that one. Sittuna khutwatan. Sittuna khutwatan. A khutwa is a step. There's an ayah in the Quran when Allah says, وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ, and do not follow the footsteps of shaitan. Khutuwat is the plural, but khutwa is the singular. So it would be sittuna khutwatan. Just in case the question's on your mind, when I'm mentioning case, like why sometimes you would say khamsina, sometimes you say khamsuna for 50, or for 40, sometimes you would say arba'ina, sometimes you'd say arba'una. You know, the difference is the case. That's the difference, you know. And an example of when you would use the marfu'a case is if it's just the subject of the sentence. You know, so if we'd say something like, 40 men said yes. 40 men said yes. So qalu is the verb, they said. 40 men, arba'una rajulan. 40 men. Qalu arba'una rajulan na'am. 40 men said yes. It's the men saying the yes, right? They are the subject of the sentence. But if they were the object of the sentence, if the 40 men were the object of the sentence, I was just to say something like, I killed 40 men, okay? قتلت 40 رجلا. I killed 40, because they're the object of the sentence. That's why we use the cases differently. Really nice, really nice. I mean, just feel free to replay this. I mean, if it's confusing, just pause it, replay it. That's the joy with this technology, is that you can go back and you consume it in your own time, because this sort of stuff that I'm telling you right now, this is like everything that's in this podcast. This is like, I think in my workbooks I cover it in about 6 lessons, I think. So it takes students usually about 3 to 6 weeks normally to go over all of this and practice it and really understand it. So it's 100% understandable if it's, if it's taken a little while to sink in. And I promise you guys, that you probably will learn it quicker than I did. I promise you, if I can do it, I promise you any of you guys can. Yeah, I'm not naturally sort of good at languages. I was never like a languages-y person. In fact, when I was at school, my French teacher wouldn't let me do a GCSE in French because I was so terrible, even in my own language. Terrible reader, terrible speller I was back then. But yeah, but that's how it is. I was inspired by something else, and it's worked out okay, alhamdulillah. So lastly, there's just the number 100. The number 100, which is mi'ah. Sometimes it's written with a long elif after the meme in there, but it's not pronounced ma'ah. I've heard a news reporter on like BBC Arabic before saying ma'ah, but it's not correct. Mi'ah is how you say 100. But it can be spoken 2 different ways. There can be a tall elif, an elif tawila, after the meme, but I don't write it like that just because I find it's more confusing if you do. But mi'ah can be written either of those 2 ways, and mi'ah is how you say 100. 1,000 is elf, and the plural is uluf. Yeah, and you use the singular afterwards. So for example, there's an ayah from the Quran that I actually want to do next week's podcast on, or I might do the week after. In Surah Al-Qadr from the Quran, there's an ayah which it's just packed with really useful grammar, all in one little ayah. So Allah says, Laylatul Qadri khayrun min alfi shahr. So Allah says, alfi shahrin. That's actually how it's written in the Quran. It's alfi shahrin. So that's how you say 1,000 months. The night of power, Laylatul Qadri. Mudaf and mudaf ilay, by the way. That's an idafa. Laylatul Qadri khayrun. Yeah, this is the khabar of the sentence. This is the news that we learn about the mudaf. It is, about the idafa. Khayrun min alfi shahr is better than 1,000. Alfi, and it's alfi because it's after min, which is the preposition, makes it alfi. Shahrin. Alfi shahrin. That's how we use the word that's counted after the 100 or the 1,000 or the 1 million. It's singular, indefinite, genitive, or has kasras. So 1,000 months, alfu shahrin. 1,000 nights, alfu laylatin. Alfu laylatin. The book 1,001 Nights. In Arabic you say alfu laylatin, 1,000 nights, wa laylatun, and a night. 1,000 nights and a night. That's how it's said in Arabic. If we were going to say 100 days, mi'atu yawmin. If we're going to say 1,000 1,000 soldiers, you'd say ألف جندي. ألف جندي. A jundi is a soldier. ألف جندي. Yeah, 1,000 soldiers. 1,000 kings. ألف ملوك. No, 1,000 kings. Or 100 kings. مئة ملوك. So that is all the numbers. You know, that's the numbers from 1 to 100 and all of their grammar. And I've given you a free, a free poster / kind of table that you can print and you can have access to it on your phone or on your computer or whatever. And you're very, very free to go through that as much as you want and share it with as many people as you want. And that's it. I think that there is definitely a need to do more stuff on numbers. I'm 100% aware of that. But how we will do it, I'll let you guys dictate it. DM me on Instagram, at Arabic with Sam, Instagram, or you can email me, arabicwithsam@gmail.com. And just tell me how you'd like to go forward. Like, would it be useful for us to do a podcast where I just run through like 20 examples, or we just run through examples of them and understand why they are the way they are? I would also, I think it'd be a nice idea to have your kind of input as we're going through these podcasts. So I might in future record them live and then just set up Instagram live, if they or Facebook live or YouTube live or all of them, however you guys would want to watch, inshallah. And then you guys can just pitch in your questions as we go, because obviously when I teach people, I have a good kind of idea of who I'm teaching and how to pitch this content. But as there could be however many people watching this, and I don't really know you, I don't really know you guys yet if you haven't got in touch with me yet. So let me know what would be a good way to go forward. What should I expand on? What would be helpful for you? If we should do that, or we should go through in a bit more detail the actual application of numbers. Like, I think learning about how to say the dates is something that students struggle on so much. Like, I sometimes have students who are quite advanced in reading, and then they come across a date, and then they just switch to 1948 rather than saying 1948. They don't actually say the whole date out in the Arabic words because it's hard. That is an advanced level of Arabic. That's a really advanced level of Arabic to be able to do that correctly. So, we could do lessons on that, and lessons on telling the time, lessons on the date, and all that sort of stuff. So just give me some advice, inshallah. Obviously, I'm learning my way through this, learning how to serve you guys best. So just get in touch and let me know. I'd love to hear from you guys. Just to end by saying, any of you are looking for a premium program to learn the Arabic language from start to finish, if you're looking for something that has structure but is also flexible, something where you can access the resources whenever you like, but the pace of it is self-directed, then I think my program would be a really good fit for you. If you want something structured and something more purposeful, then go ahead to my website, Arabic with Sam, and you can just put /60, the number 60, and that will take you to my premium program. I'd love to have you guys on board. That's the end of this little podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're really looking forward to next week as much as I am. Next week, we are actually going to be talking about my 10 favourite Arabic verbs. We're going to go through 10 Arabic verbs, pull out some really, really interesting historical significance of those verbs, pull out some really interesting nouns and adjectives that come from those verbs, and really go into the nitty-gritty of how you can use them. So that's going to be next week's episode. I'll catch you guys then. A very warm and heartfelt assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
وما أرسلنا من رسول إلا بلسان قومه ليبين لهم فيضل الله من يشاء ويهدي من يشاء وهو العزيز الحكيم.